starting on the book of Tahara. Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فصل وتحصل الطهارة بما من التغير بشيء سلما إذا تغير بنجس طرح أو طاهر لعادة قد صلح إلا إذا لازمه في الغالب كمغرة فمطلق كالذائب.
نعم. فصل وتحصل الطهارة. هذا كتاب الطهارة. تحصل الطهارة وتثبت بما من التغير بشيء سلما. طهارة جنسان. جنس طهارة حدث وهي نوعان طهارة صغرى وطهارة كبرى. طهارة الصغرى هي الوضوء وطهارة الكبرى هي الغسل. وطهارة الخبث جنس واحد يعني لا يتنوع إلى نوعين طهارة النجاسات. كل من الطهارتين يحصل بماء أي بماء سلم من التغير بشيء أي لم يتغير بشيء يفارقه غالبا، لكن ذلك التغير إلى تغييرين. إذا تغير بنجس طرح يعني ترك مطلقا فلا يصلح للعادة ولا للعبادة، أو طاهر لعادة قد صلح. إذا تغير بطاهر كصابون أو وسخ ثوب أو دهن أو لبن وعسل هذا يصلح للعادات بأن ممكن نستعمله في الشراب أو في الطبخ وفي غسل الثياب، وأما الطهارة فلا يصلح لها.
So the book of purity, section ritual purification or tahara, is obtained through use of pure water. And he said tahara is of two types, the purity from hadath and purity from khabath. So the purity from hadath, H-A-D-A-T-H, the hadath is also of two types. The lesser purity and the hadath is the ritual impurity. And there's the lesser ritual impurity and the greater ritual impurity. The lesser ritual impurity requires wudu. So that's hadath asghar, H-A-D-A-T-H, hadath asghar, A-S-G-H-A-R, hadath asghar, and that requires wudu to remove that state. And then there's hadath akbar, which is H-A-D-A-T-H, hadath again, akbar, A-K-B-A-R. And what that means is greater ritual impurity. And that's the state where a person needs to perform a ghusl, a complete body wash, to remove that state. So hadath asghar, so hadath A-S-G-H-A-R, hadath asghar.
لكن لا تكون تكلمين لكن هناك بعض من الأخوات يعطيها وما يحتاج إلى صلاة.
Then so those are the two ritual purifications, the hadath asghar and the akbar. And then there's the hadath, the purity from khabath, which is K-H-A-B-A-T-H, khabath. And that's the actual filth, najasa, that may get on the body or the clothes that needs to be removed. So both types of ritual impurity, the hadath and the khabath, can only be obtained through the use of pure water. So that's what it means by ritual purification, is obtained through the use of pure water. And this water, the definition of this water is water that is free from any alteration, from something that changes its color, smell, or taste. Its taste, its smell, or its color. If it changes in any one of those three qualities, it's no longer considered mutlaq. It's no longer purifying water. If it was changed, and then now this water it's either changed by something pure or something impure. If it was changed by something impure, like blood or urine, then it must be discarded. Then the water is considered filthy, and it cannot be used for neither worship, devotional uses, or conventional daily uses. It has to be discarded. If the water was changed by a pure substance, such as milk, or butter, or soap, or even grease or filth, anything else that's pure, then it is suitable for conventional daily non-devotional purposes, but not suitable for worship. So if water's been changed by something that's pure, like milk or soap, then you can use it for other things, like you can use it for cooking, or if it's changed by soap, you can use it to wash clothes, but you can't use it for worship, meaning that you can't use it to gain tahara. إلا إذا لازمه في الغالب كمغرة فمطلق كالذائب.
إلا إذا لازمه في الغالب، إلا إذا لازم هذا المغير الماء في الغالب أي في أغلب أحواله، كمغرة وهي سواد يكون أسفل الماء من طين أسود، ومطلق كذائب أو كخز وطحلب، هذه الأنواع التي تقارن الماء دائما كالسبخة، هذا مطلق. كالذائب كذلك هذا الماء الذي يتثلج وبعد ذلك يذوب، هذا تمكن به الطهارة.
Unless that change is something that is likely to be an intrinsic property, such as redness, then it is considered to be absolutely pure and purifying, like melted snow. So if the water was changed but it was changed by something that's naturally a part of the water, or something natural, like algae or mud or salt, if the water is salty, or if it was changed by something redness, like if there's minerals in the water. Sometimes if you draw water from wells, it'll have a yellowish tint or it'll have a reddish tint. So that water, even though it's been changed by something that's normally a part of the water, then that water is considered like pure, like melted snow. Meaning you consider it, as far as its hukum, its judgment, it's as if it's water that has not been changed. So are there any questions on this section on Tahara before we move on? فصل في فرائض الوضوء. فرائض الوضوء 7 وهي دلك وفور نية في بدئه.
فصل فرائض الوضوء 7 وهي دلك وفور نية في بدئه. هذا الفصل في فرائض الوضوء. فرائض الوضوء 7، 4 مجمع عليها بين العلماء، لا يختلف فيها 2 ما ذكرت في القرآن، هي لا يختلف فيه العلماء. و3 اختلف فيها العلماء، فمن قائل يقول بفرضها كالإمام مالك، ومن قائل يقول بعدم فرضها وهو الإمام أبو حنيفة، ومن قائل يقول بالبعض كالإمام الشافعي يقول بالنية من هذه 7، ومن قائل يقول مثلا تفصيل كالإمام الشافعي. فصل فرائض الوضوء 7 عند الإمام مالك، وذلك فور وهي دلك وفور نية في بدء. هذه الثلاث الأولى هي التي حصل فيها الخلاف بين العلماء. دلك وهو إمرار العضو على العضو مرورا متوسطا لا مفرطا ولا مقصرا، وفور وهو الموالاة يعني متابعة الأعضاء حيث لا يشف بعضها دون أن تشرع في البعض الآخر. النية وهي أن يجزم ابتداء أنه يزيل عنه رفع الحدث ابتداء، أنه يزيل عنه الحدث من رفع الحدث ابتداء عند الوضوء.
The obligations, the obligatory actions in wudu are 7: rubbing, continuity, intention at its onset. So he said, according to Imam Malik, the obligations of wudu are 7, and there's a difference of opinion about how many exactly are, or what are the obligations of wudu. According to Imam Abu Hanifa, they're 4. According to Imam Shafi'i, they're 6, and according to Imam Malik, they're 7. So the 4 that there's consensus about are the washing of the face, the arms up to and including the elbow, wiping the head, and then washing the feet. So those 4, there's no difference of opinion about them. There's a difference of opinion about the intention. Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i consider that it's an obligation of the wudu, whereas Imam Abu Hanifa does not consider it to be an obligation. And so they differ on these other 3. So the 7 according to Imam Malik, the first one is rubbing or delk, and it's considered having one limb move over, like the hand move over the limb after pouring water onto the limb. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like a hard rub, just as long as that limb is passing over the limb. You're not merely just pouring the water over the limb. Then you have continuity, and continuity is that you do the entire wudu in one sitting, that you don't split it up. You don't do half of the wudu now and then half an hour later do the other half. That you do the entire wudu in one sitting. Then intention at the onset, that at the beginning of the wudu you must have an intention, and he's going to discuss what exactly you intend. وَلْيَنْوِ رَفْعَ حَدَثٍ وَمُفْتَرَضٍ أَوْ اسْتِبَاحَةٍ لِمَمْنُوعٍ عَرَضٍ.
ما هي النية؟ النية في الصلاة يقول ينوي رفع حدث، ينوي أنه يرفع عنه الحدث. والحدث هو المنع المترتب على الأعضاء، يعني المقدر على الأعضاء المانع لها من فعل بعض العبادات، وكأنه منع مقدر على الأعضاء مانع لها من فعل بعض العبادات. ينوي رفع هذا الوصف المقدر، هذا الوصف المقدر ينوي رفعه. أو مفترض ينوي أنه يفعل أمرا واجبا عليه أو السباحة لممنوع عرض، أو ينوي أنه يريد بهذا الفعل استباحة ما هو ممنوع له عليه الصلاة ومس المصحف والطواف إلى غير ذلك.
The intention can be one of three things. One must intend one of these three things. Either the removal of a state of ritual impurity. So the ritual impurity is the hadath. So you intend to remove it. So this state of hadath, which is a state that we consider is a hukum, a judgment that's given to those limbs of wudu. So those limbs of wudu, it's as if there's something upon them, this ritual impurity, and you want to remove that ritual impurity from those limbs. So by making the intention, this can be one of the intentions. You say, I want to remove this state of hadath, the state of ritual impurity. I want to get myself out of the state of hadath and be in a state of wudu. So that's one of the intentions that you can have.
Like a mental hadath?
I don't understand.
Like you feel like you just want to take wudu, like you want to purify your state. You want to bring your state.
Do you have wudu or do you not have wudu?
At that time, not having wudu.
Well, then you're removing then you're intending to remove this hadath that's on the limbs. Or you have the fulfillment of an obligation. You intend, you say that, say for example, there's a prayer about to come up, so there's Dhuhr prayer. And the Dhuhr prayer is an obligatory prayer. And to properly perform the Dhuhr prayer, you have to have wudu. So you say, I'm doing this wudu to fulfill that obligation. So by the fact that this wudu is needed for the prayer and the prayer is an obligation, then this wudu is also an obligation. So you say, I'm doing this wudu because it's an obligation upon me. Or rendering worship permissible by removing a preventative. Or you can have the intention that you want to render worship permissible. So there are certain things that require a person to be, that a person be in a state of wudu, such as doing tawaf, circumambulation of the Kaaba, or doing a prayer, or touching the mushaf. So those things you have to be in a state of wudu. So if you're not in a state of wudu, those acts of worship are haram. So you say, I'm going to do this wudu to make those things, those acts of worship permissible for me. So the intention can be one of these three things. So the second one, the fulfillment of an obligation, it's that you're considering that the wudu in and of itself is an obligation. Because the Dhuhr prayer, for example, or any the obligatory prayer is an obligation. One of the conditions of the prayer is that you be in a state of wudu. So by default, it makes that this wudu is an obligatory act. So you say, you go into you say that this wudu is now an obligation upon me. Whereas in the third one, the rendering worship permissible by removing a preventative, that act of worship may or may not be obligatory. It may be, say for example, like reciting, touching the mushaf. Touching the mushaf is not an obligation. But if you want to do that, you have to be in a state of wudu. So until you do wudu, touching the mushaf is haram. So you're going to make the impermissible permissible. You're going to make the haram in this situation, which is touching the mushaf. In that state, you're going to make that worship permissible. No, if the Quran is, the question was if the Quran is on a tape or a CD, for example, is that the same? And that's not the same because there's no writing. So to touch a CD or to touch a cassette that has the Quran, the best thing, of course, to get the benefit, derive the benefit of listening to the Quran, person should be in a state of wudu, but it's not haram to touch a cassette or a CD. If you're renewing it, then the renewing it's recommended to renew the wudu if you already have it for each prayer. But then your intention would be that you're renewing the wudu. Your intention is that it's an extra act of wudu. It's a recommended wudu. No, you don't intend fard because it's not fard. You do not have to be in wudu to listen to the Quran, but it would optimize. You would gain more benefit by being in a state of wudu. The question is, if a non-Muslim wants to touch a mushaf, if it has any Arabic in it, like even if it's like Yusuf Ali translation or a translation where it has the Arabic and the English, it shouldn't be given to a non-Muslim at all. If you want to give them a Quran, if it has a translation, the translation of the meanings, then that's permissible. But if it has any Arabic in it, it shouldn't be given to them.
So we couldn't make some type
Yeah, if they want to do wudu, because they are most probably in a state of janaba, so they would have to do a ghusl and they would have to do wudu. But at the beginning of Ibn Ashir, it said that the shahada is a precondition for all acts of worship. So their ghusl and their wudu is not sound until they're Muslim. No.
Is that a sin to give a non-Muslim?
The question is it a sin to give a non-Muslim a Quran with Arabic? And the answer is yes. Just like it's mentioned in Akhdari, to give even a Muslim child that's not in a state of wudu, to hand a mushaf to him would be haram. And the sin is upon the older person, because the child doesn't have any sin. But if it's a non-Muslim, it's also a sin.
So it's not that like an essential Quran for dawah, like the Quran's clear.
The essential Quran would be just in English, so there's no harm in giving that.
Now, it's not a mushaf if it has English in it, correct?
If it has English and Arabic in it, it's considered like a tafsir, so you could touch that without wudu if you're Muslim, but not a non-Muslim. وغسل وجه غسله اليدين ومسح رأس غسله الرجلين.
نعم. وغسل وجه وحده من منابت شعر الرأس المعتاد إذا كان هذا طوله بالنسبة لمن لا لحية له، أما من له لحية فإلى انتهائها ولو طالت. غسل وجه وحده عرضا ما بين الأذن إلى الأذن، ويدخل العذار يعني هذا الحنك كله يلزم غسله. وغسله كذلك غسله اليدين إلى المرفقين بإدخال الغاية. ومسح رأس كذلك مسح الرأس وحده من منابت شعر الرأس المعتاد إلى نقرة القفا. ورأس غسله الرجلين. والفرض عم مجمع الأذنين يعني في العرض، وأما في الطول ما ذكره هو من الأغنى. والمرفقين عم يعني في اليدين، والكعبين عم في الرجلين.
The other 4 obligations of the wudu is washing the face, washing both hands, wiping over the head, and washing both feet. And the obligation concerning the aforementioned includes from ear to ear. So the definition of the face, when we say washing the face, from the width of the face is considered from the ear to the ear. So that's this little cartilage part in the ear. The ear, that's not actually part of the face. So between those 2 parts, that's the width of the face. And then from the length of the face is defined as beginning at the natural, like an average person's hairline. So sometimes a person may have a receding hairline, but you would consider it just from where hair normally begins down to the end of the chin. And to the end of the chin is for the person that does not have a beard. Whereas if the person had a beard, they would have to wash to the entire, or they would have to go down to the entire length of the beard, even if it's very long. And then when he says the hands up to and including the elbows, so it's the hands, washing the hands and the arms up to and including the elbows. And then for the feet, washing up to and including the ankles.
It's like if you have a beard, right? You wash up to here. It goes like from here, like for you, for example. You wash down.
No, you would just wipe over the entire beard. Yeah. And then also the end of the face goes back to the end of the jaw, right where the jaw ends. Person would have to wash all the way back there. خلل أصابع اليدين والشعر وجهن إذا من تحته الجلد ظهر.
نعم. يجب تخليل أصابع اليدين. أحد من لم يخلل أصابعه بالماء خللها الله بالنار يوم القيامة. أصابع اليدين وشعر وجه كذلك. شعر الوجه سواء كان لحية أو حاجب عين أو شارب يجب تخليله إذا كانت تظهر البشرة تحته عند المواجهة. ما إذا كان بالتأمل فهذا لا يجب غسله، أي لا يجب تخليله. وشعر وجه إذا من تحته الجلد ظهر.
Then he says, interlace the fingers of both hands when washing and run them through the facial hair if the underlying skin is visible. So to interlace the fingers and wash in between the fingers is an obligation because of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever does not wash in between the fingers, whoever does not do takhleel of the fingers, Allah will interlace his fingers with fire. So washing in between the fingers. is an obligation, and then also to run the fingers through the facial hair if the underlying skin is visible. So facial hair, which is either the eyebrows, mustache, or beard, if the underlying skin is visible, meaning at a first glance, if at first glance you can see the underlying skin, then you have to run the fingers through and get water down to the skin. Whereas if at first glance you can't see the skin from underneath, it's sufficient to wipe over that hair, just with lightly moving the hair though. But if you can see the underlying skin, not at first glance, but after just looking at the person for a few instances, then that's not considered wajib or incumbent to get down to the skin. It's only hair that is visible if it's immediately visible. ما عندي. So سنن الوضوء. سننه السبع ابتداء غسل اليدين ورد مسح الرأس مسح الأذنين مضمضة استنشاق استنثار ترتيب فرضه وذا المختار.
نعم سننه السبع ابتداء غسل اليدين. سنن الوضوء 7. ابتداء غسل اليدين 3 قبل إدخالهما في الإناء، ورد مسح الرأس لمن بقي في يديه بلل، مسح الأذنين سنة ويسن تجديد الماء لهما، مضمضة استنشاق واستنثار، كذلك المضمضة وهو إدخال الماء في الفم وتحريكه فيه ومجه منه، استنشاق وجلب الماء في الأنف، استنثار وهو رده من الأنف، ويندب أن يكون الرد باليد اليسرى، ترتيب فرضه ذلك ترتيب الفرائض على ما جاء في القرآن، فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين وذا المختار. وهذا هو القول المختار يعني في ترتيب الفرائض. وقال قول بالوجوب ويوافق في ذلك الشافعي، وقال قول بالندب فقط. بقيت خلاص.
The sunan of wudu are 7. To begin by washing both hands at the beginning, washing both hands up to including the wrists is a sunnah. To return from back to front, the wiping motion of the head. So the first wiping of the head was considered an obligation, and then to return the wipe is a sunnah. And then also to wipe both ears is considered a sunnah. Rinsing the mouth is also sunnah, and that's done by putting water into the mouth with the right hand. It's recommended that it's done with the right hand, and then lightly swishing the water around in the mouth without making any noise, and then spitting it out again without making any noise. Then lightly sniffing water into the nostrils is a sunnah, and then blowing it out. So that's the istinshaq, is the sniffing the waters into the nostrils, and then blowing it out is a separate sunnah. And it's recommended that it be done, the water be, when you sniff the water into the nostrils, that you bring the water up with the right hand, and then you blow it out, placing the left hand, the index finger and the thumb on the nostrils, right above the nostrils, and then just kind of lightly blowing out. And again, without making any sound. Naam. So one of the condition that it's a sunnah to return wipe the head if your hands are still wet. So sometimes because of dry weather or dry hair, whatever the reason may be, if a person does the obligatory wipe, if they check their hands and if there's no water, then it's not sunnah to return wipe. I mean, you don't add more water and then return wipe. So if you do the first wipe and then you look at your hands and they're still wet, or normally they should still be wet, and then you return wipe. And you also have to check if the hair is dry, or if it's a very dry weather and your hands are getting dried. If they're getting dried off before you completely wipe the head, then you do have to add more water and continue where they got dried. Is that clear? To start the wipe over? No, you should just pick up where you left off. In Ramadan, you would just do it. Normally, you should do it lightly. Not that much, not like sniffing water up into the nose. You don't want to do it like some people sniff it very, very heavily, and that could actually harm the nose. So you would just do it lightly, and that's what it says, right? Lightly snuffing, and then you would do it even more lightly in Ramadan. And it's makruh to do it, like a normal snuffing up in the water and then getting water to the entire. For the rinsing of the mouth in Ramadan, you would just do it at the front of the mouth, whereas normally you would get the entire mouth. The question was, if you're afraid of it getting to your throat, you can leave it because it's sunnah. Technically, yes, you can, but if you're leaving it for that reason, it's most probably waswasa, because you should be able to get it in there just lightly and then spit it out. So you don't really want to leave a sunnah. So are there any questions on the sunnah before we go on to the fadail? Oh. And then finally, following the correct order of the obligations, that is the best choice. So then the final sunnah that he mentions here is following the correct order of the obligations. So the obligatory limbs, or the obligatory things that you have to wash in the wudu, the face, the arms, wiping of the head and the feet. In the Quran, it's mentioned in that particular order. Face, then arms, then wiping of the head, then feet. So technically, you can do them out of order, and it would be correct, but it's considered sunnah to follow the order that's mentioned in the Quran. And according to Imam Shafi'i, it's an obligation to follow that order. فضائل الوضوء وأحد عشر الفضائل أتت تسمية وبقعة قد طهرت.
نعم. مندوب 11 مسألة أتت تسمية أن يسمي الله تعالى، قل بسم الله، وفي إكمالها قولا هل يقتصر على بسم الله ويقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبقعة قد طهرت، كذلك البقعة تكون طاهرة وشأنها الطهارة، يعني طاهرة هي في نفسها، وشأنها أصالة أن تكون موضوعة للطهارة، بخلاف الكنيف قبل أن تدخله النجاسة هذا ما شأنه الطهارة، لأنه ما وضع للطهارة فيكره الوضوء فيه. تقليل ماء، كذلك مندوب أن يقلل الماء بلا حد سوى الإتقان، إلا إذا أتقن أعضاؤه فما زاد على ذلك مكروه. وتيامن الإناء، كذلك الإناء إذا كان مفتوحا مندوب أن يكون على يمينه، أما إذا كان مغلوقا ويصب منه الماء فمندوب أن يكون على يساره. الشفع والتهذيب في مغسولنا، الشفع يعني الغسل الثانية، والتهذيب يعني الغسل الثالثة في المغسولات، أما الممسوحات فلا يزاد فيها على واحدة.
So this is the section on the merits of the wudu. And just to go over again, the difference between the sunnah and the fada'il, according to the way the Malikis have categorized them. The sunnahs are things that the Prophet ﷺ did all the time and he would never leave. So for that reason, it's a stronger recommended act, and it's giving the hukum of sunnah. And if a person were to leave it, if it's hukum is sunnah, if a person were to leave it, there's automatically a dislikeness, like a karaha attached to it. The fadila is something the Prophet ﷺ did often, but sometimes he would leave it. So for that reason, it's given a less. In its recommendation, it's less than a sunnah. And also because it's less, if a person leaves it, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's done a disliked action. So leaving a fadila may or may not be makruh, but leaving a sunnah is always makruh. So the fada'il, the merits of wudu, and again also the words the fada'il or mustahab or mandub, they're all words that mean the same thing there at this level. So in the wudu, the 11 merits of wudu have reached us. The first one is saying Bismillah. So at the beginning of the wudu, saying Bismillah, and there's a difference of opinion whether you add Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, saying Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, or just saying Bismillah. Two opinions. The second merit of wudu, merit of sack of wudu, is a place that is free of impurities in which to perform wudu. So that you're performing the wudu in an area that there's no najasa, whether it's in a bathroom or outside, because sometimes there's areas of, like if an animal is going, like a dog or cat, using the restroom around there, or whatever it may be. If the area has najasa in it, it's makruh to do wudu there. So not only does the place should be free from impurities, it also should be a place that's normally designed to be free from impurities. An example of that would be, so for that reason, to do wudu in a bathroom is makruh, whether or not it's been used. So say it's a brand new house and there's a bathroom in there and it's never been used, so there's no impurities there, it's never had impurities on it, but because it was designed, the purpose that it was placed for was to have impurities there, it's makruh to do wudu there. So the place should be pure, and it should be a place that's used, that's associated with purity. Because they mentioned that just by merely making a place, making a bathroom, it automatically becomes like a place where the jinn go to live. No, so like at the wudu stations here, like where there's a separation between the place where you're cleaning up najasa, the toilets, and the wudu area. That's fine. It's not makruh to do wudu in that area. Then also conserving water, using little water, and that's going to be relative to a person. Larger people are going to require more water, smaller people less. But as long as the person is consciously conserving water. Also placing the vessel on one's right side. So if a person's using a vessel to do wudu with, it should be on the right side. That's if it's an open container, something like the shape of a bowl, because you're going to be getting the water with your right hand. If it's a closed container like a teapot or something like a water bottle, then you put it on your left side so that you pick it up with your left hand and you're going to be squirting the water into your right hand. Then also doing the washings a second and a third time. So all the washings that we mentioned, like washing the hands, washing the arms, washing the face, the first one is the obligatory washing, or maybe the sunnah washing, like in the case of the hands. The second and the third washing are considered fadila. It's a meritorious act. So the second washing in and of itself is a fadila, and also the third one. So a person could do the washings one time, all once, or he could do them all 2 times, or he could do them all 3 times. Because the Prophet ﷺ was seen doing wudu in all those ways. Sometimes he just washed his limbs all once, sometimes twice, and sometimes 3 times. Yeah, they're separate recommended acts. So a person does not have to wash 3 times to get this meritorious act. Even if they wash 2 times, they got it, and if they wash 3 times, they get more reward. ما عندي انتهاء ما عندي انتهاء.
ناحية الفضائل ما فيه ممكن تنحي الفضائل ما فيه شيء.
سألتي هل مثلا يمكن واحد إذا أراد أن يغسل مثلا كأنه وجهه يغسله 3 مرات والذراعين مثلا يغسله 2 مرتين والرجلين يغسله مرة.
وقال عدم التهليل ما يبلغ درجة الكراهة خلاف الأولى.
So the question was asked, can a person even in the wudu like wash some limbs once, some twice, and some 3 times? He said leaving the washing of the washing 3 times is not makruh, like to wash it once or twice is not makruh. It's not the best thing. The best thing is to wash it 3 times on all the limbs. So in answer, technically yes, a person could do some of the limbs once, twice, and 3 times.
It didn't mention washing the hands from the arms.
No, neither did.
What about when you wash your nose?
It said that the way you do it is the face first, then the arm.
Do you have the sunnah of wudu? The question was asked also about lightly sniffing water up into the nostrils. So the first time would be considered sunnah, and the second and third washing of the nose would each be recommended. And then the washing of the mouth, the first time would be sunnah, the second and the third would be recommended.
So we said we were doing it in the oil, face, washing both hands to the elbow. So would you wash your nose, and it would be the proper place of washing and sticking the water in your nose.
So you would the first thing you would wash your hands 3 times, then you would wash your face. Then after washing the hands, then you rinse out your mouth. So right after washing, you do your hands first, and then you rinse out your mouth, and then you rinse out your nose, and then you go to the first obligatory act of the wudu, and that's the face. No, I'm starting with the top. Could you grab that paper? And they said one of the wisdoms behind rinsing the mouth and then sniffing the water is because you'll see by bringing water up By bringing water up with your hands, you're looking at the water so you see if it's changed in its color. By putting it in your mouth, you see if it's changed in its taste. And by putting it in your nose, you see if it's changed by smell.
Question on doing hands initially. Do you do it up to and including where you'd wear a watch, or do you do it just to the part that would be exposed in a woman's clothing?
You would do it up to, this is technically, this would like the wrist. I guess when you say the wrist, that little bone right above, right.
Up to and including the wrist.
Yeah, but I guess sometimes that wrist bone, that protruding bone right there, up to and including that.
So we're women's clothing.
Right, so women's clothing, they should be covering, that protruding bone should not be seen.
ومن اللي أزيدها على ذلك.
No. And he said the woman should actually cover even more than that.
زيدها شوي على ذلك.
And there's a brother that's selling some good, what's it called? Like what are those things called? Like it's like things you slip over the forearm, and so you can wear it under the limbs, and that even if the sleeve falls back, it's still covered up. So there's a brother here selling those they're from Yemen. So yes, in the washing you would include the little bone, up to and including that bone. No, if you're dipping your hand in the container, you should be doing it with your right hand, not with the left hand.
And the very first time you should pour it into your right hand?
No, that probably will.
Okay.
Yeah, go too deep. بدء الميامن سواك وندب ترتيب مسنونه أو مع ما يجب.
نعم بدء الميامن مندوب للإنسان يبدأ بميامنه في الأعضاء المنفصلة كالذراعين والرجلين. أما الأعضاء المتصلة كالوجه والرأس ما فيه ميامن بل يمسحه يغسله كلا الوجه بآن واحد والرأس يمسحه في آن واحد. بدء الميامن السواك كذلك مندوب السواك مؤكد قبل كل وضوء. سواك وندب ترتيب مسنونه ومع ما يجب. كذلك مندوب أن يرتب المسنونات في أنفسها بأن يبدأ باليدين وبعد ذلك الاستنشاق والمضمضة ومع الفرائض أيضا بأن يرتب هذه قبل الوجه ويؤخر الأذنين على الرأس وهكذا. هذا ترتيب بين السنن في أنفسها ومع الفرائض هذا ندب فقط.
So then the rest of the recommended acts, we don't actually have the handout for it tonight, but again on Thursday inshallah we'll have the entire text ready. So then also part of the recommended acts of the wudu is beginning with washing the right limbs first, the right and then the left. So the right hand and then the left hand, the right arm and then the left arm, the right foot and then the left foot. Then also the siwak, using brushing the teeth, preferably with like a toothstick, but even if it's done with a toothbrush, like one of the plastic toothbrushes, that's fine. The important thing is to clean the teeth, even if it's done with a cloth put on the fingers or even just the finger itself, to clean the teeth.
Within the wudu?
The wudu, the siwak should be done before the wudu. And then it's also recommended to keep the correct order of the sunnahs, and also to keep them in order with the obligations. So keeping the order of the obligations is sunnah. And then keeping the order of the sunnahs is recommended. And then keeping the correct order of the sunnahs along with the obligation is another recommended act. So for example, you have the correct order of the sunnahs is that you have washing the hands first, rinsing the mouth, then the nose, and then return wipe of the head, and then wiping of the ears. Now, and then the correct order of the obligations, we covered that. So to interlace them together, you would have a sunnah, washing the hands, sunnah the mouth, sunnah the nose, obligation the face, then an obligation the arms, up to and including the wrist, and then an obligation the first wipe of the head, and then a return wipe of the head is a sunnah, and then a sunnah the ears, and then the feet. So you have like sunnah, obligatory, sunnah, you have them both. Is that clear? So we said to keep the correct order of the obligations is what? Is sunnah. Then to keep the correct order of the sunnahs is mandub. And then to keep the order of, to interlace correctly, properly the sunnahs with the obligatory acts is also mandub. So you would have a sunnah sunnah, sunnah, obligation, 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 sunnah, obligation. And that's the hands, the mouth, the nose. Those three are sunnahs. Then the face, it's an obligation. Then the arms, it's another obligation. Then the first wipe of the head is an obligation. The return wipe of the head is a sunnah. Wiping of the ears is a sunnah. And then washing of the feet is an obligation.
The sunnah was never left by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The fard was established from what he told was obligatory.
Well, we'll do that in another class, inshallah. That's kind of off the subject, so we'll do that if you want to ask that, inshallah, after the class. The ears, to do them properly, you take water, you renew the water, and then you put the index finger in the ear canal lightly, and placing the thumb behind the lower, like you're going to start with at the lower earlobe, the back of the ear, where women would have their earrings right at that the lower part of the ear. You would start with the thumb at the back, and the index finger inside the ear canal, and then you would go wiping the thumb, the back of the ear, and the side of the index finger, the inside of the ear, and then you would just go up to the top. And then you wouldn't wash in all the little creases of the ear. That's disliked.
What happens if you wipe that down after you wipe up on the ear?
If you wipe, could you repeat the question?
If you wipe up, do the return wipe?
Of the ear?
Yeah.
If any time the Sharia requests a specific thing, to increase upon that is makruh. That's a general principle. So if it said wipe the head, to wash it is makruh. If it says wipe the khuf, to wash it is makruh. If it says wipe the ears one time, to keep wiping them and washing them would be makruh. If it says in the Eid al-Fitr, give out a sa', like 2 liters of food, to give more would be makruh.
You don't want to go 3 times on the ear.
No 3 times on the ear. Just once.
If you're making a fard wudu and you're going to just wash your arm, isn't the hands included in that?
No, when we say washing the arms, washing the hands at the beginning is sunnah. And then when you come back to wash the arms, you have to wash the hands again. Don't think it's just from now you pick up from where you left off. Then also, then beginning wiping of the head. When we begin wipe the head. How are you doing? When you begin wiping the head, you begin. قلنا بدء مسح الرأس من مقدمه.
نعم.
وبدء مسح الرأس من مقدمه تخليله أصابعا بقدمه.
بدء مسح الرأس من مقدمه وكذلك سائر الأعضاء. بدء مسح الرأس من مقدمه مندوب. كذلك سائر الأعضاء عندما يريد الإنسان وغسلها يبدأ بها من مقدمها ندبا. تخليله أصابعا بقدمه. تخليل الأصابع في الرجلين مندوب فقط بخلاف اليدين على ما تقدم هو واجب.
So when we say the obligation is to wipe the head, you can technically start at any portion of the head to wipe it, but it's recommended to begin at the beginning of the head and wipe backwards. And the same goes for any of the limbs. You can wash the arms at any point as long as you cover the entire thing. But it's recommended to start at the tip of the fingers and go down. And the same thing with the feet, to start with washing the tips of the feet, the toes, and then wash the entire foot. And then also it's recommended to do takhleel, wash in between the toes of the feet. So that's recommended, but that's if water has to get in between the toes. As far as actually rubbing in between the toes, it's recommended. Whereas we said getting in between the fingers is an obligation. But getting in between the toes and rubbing in between the toes is recommended. But water, in any case, still has to get there. No, it's wajib to get water between the toes, but it's recommended to actually rub in between the toes.
انتهينا من الفضائل.
نعم.
إن شاء الله. عليكم. كيف سوريا؟
نعم. So if a man or a woman has braids in their hair, they can wipe over the braids. They don't have to undo them. But as long as the braids aren't very tight and they're So as long as they're not very tight. If they're just regular, they're not very tight, you can wipe over them, and you would just wipe over the entire length of the braids. No, water does not have to reach the scalp in the wiping of the head. If you're doing ghusl, water has to reach the scalp, and it has to reach every strand of hair. And again, in ghusl, you don't have to unravel the braids, as long as you just kind of squeeze squeeze the water, saturate them with the water, and make sure that water gets to the every braid. But if the braids are very tight braids, then yes, you can't wipe over them. Would they be considered tight? Yeah. Pretty tight, yeah. You would have to undo tight braids, yeah. No.
When you say very tight, that would be defined as if you were making a ghusl, you wouldn't be able to get all your hair wet while it's
Just one second. هو في المسح على الضفائر إذا كان اشتد بأنفسها ما يجوز المسح عليها صحيح؟ المسح على الضفائر إذا اشتد بأنفسها قال إنه مثلا يجوز المسح على الضفائر إلا إذا كانت بخيوط قليلة.
هو في خيوط.
ما يعني إذا بدون يكون في خيوط قليلة كخيط أو خيطين أو لم يشتد بنفسها صحيح؟
في المسح وفي الغسل.
المسح. صحيح.
أنا رأيتها كلها في الغسل وأما في الوضوء ما رأيت ثاني.
Okay, we'll leave off on the braid. Just remind me on that next Thursday, because we're just going to look into that and then answer that on Thursday. He's going to discuss that in the section of ghusl. But yes, in answer, like wudu in ghusl, that's actually the optimum thing that you're going to do a ghusl and have wudu in it. And even if you do not do wudu, if you just do an entire ghusl and you didn't do anything that would break your wudu, when you step out of the area that you're doing ghusl, when you're done with the ghusl, you have wudu, so you can pray. Right. Yeah, we're done right now. If there's just any questions. Naam, if the hair is just up in a bun or just in like a, what is it called, like a ponytail, then you would have to you couldn't wipe over it. That dispensation of wiping over braids is only for braids.
What if you don't have like any clips or anything holding your hair up? Can you still wipe over it? Just like you just tie your hair up. Can you just wipe over that?
You tied it up with like the hair itself?
Yes.
No, you'd have to undo it. Oh, and just kind of bring it over to the side of your, like and you're wiping it over your like shoulder or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the head. If you feel like the definition of the head, these right below the temple, you have that protruding bone. You feel that? So that's where you would put your thumbs. That's where you would start. You put your thumbs right there and your hands right at the beginning of the natural hair foreline. And then you would go back, and then your thumbs, you would be getting that bone that you feel right behind your ear. That bone, that's all the skull bone. So you're actually just getting the entire skull. You would go all the way down till you feel the back, there's that little depression down at the base of the skull. That's where you're going to. That's if you don't have long hair. If you have long hair, you get the entire length of the long hair. Yeah, so you would wipe under the hair all the way down. If you still jet lagged a little bit.
The back of the hair is not part of the hair.
inshallah. What was the question?
The back of the hair, the part facing like your neck.
Right.
You have to wipe that on the first wipe down.
On the first wipe down?
نعم مسترخي مثلا عندما واحد إذا كان عنده طويل مثلا لابد يمسح هذا اللي تحته صحيح هذا مثلا يمسح اللي تحته كأنه إذا واحد كان مثلا شعره طويل يمسح هذا وكذلك هذا اللي تحته لأنه إذا مسح فقط هكذا يبقى اللي من تحته
يفعل هكذا ويضم بيديه حتى يمشي
ولكن كأنه بالإبهامين يدخل مثلا ويأخذ ويمسح اللي تحته كهذا صحيح
يفعل هكذا
نعم.
يضم الشعر إليه ولذلك قال أن الضفائر لا يلزم مسح أسفلهما بل هو يدخل يديه ما تحته في رد المسح
فرد المسح
نعم وذلك قاله الدرزي قال من كمال الوجوب لكن قالوا ليس مشهورا بل هو مثلا
فإذا واحد فقط فعل هذا يكون كافر
يفعل هكذا شوف يأتي على الأطراف
على الأطراف ولكن يعني كأنه يأخذ هذا ولكن اللي يجب مثلا المسح من تحت إذا فعل هكذا يكفيه
وخليل أنه يكفيه قالوا يدخلان يده في تحت في رد المسح
تحت نعم
فهو معناه أن التحت لا يجب على
نعم.
قول المشهور إذا قول يفهم
نعم
هكذا هو لا يوضع رسول الله يدخلان يدهما تحت
في الرد
المسح قال هو الذي قال من كمال الوجوب ولكن عن مشهور ليس
نعم
لكن الاحتياط هو يفعل هكذا
So if a person has long hair, if they just wipe the outer portion of the hair, not the bottom of the hair that's like facing the back of the neck, according to the dominant opinion, that's sufficient. But to get out, there is a difference of opinion. Some say that actually that hair that's on the bottom that you have to wipe it. So to get out of the difference of opinion, the safest thing would be to get that bottom portion, like when the underneath portion. So when you go back there with your thumbs, kind of grab the hair and then go under, get the entire length of the thing. Yeah, and you kind of you're pulling it kind of into a ponytail, like the sister was describing. And then the ends, the same thing. If it's the top, yes, definitely you would have to get it. And the bottom portion, there's a difference of opinion. If you're wearing a ring for men, as long as it's a Sharia ring, silver, and it's only one, more than one is not permissible. It's just sunnah only to wear one. If it's that, then you can wipe over it, like if it's tight. So you can wipe over it. So even though water's not getting to the skin underneath, that's fine. Same thing for women wearing jewelry, like earrings or nose rings. They don't have to get water underneath it because it's permissible for them to be using that type of jewelry. So for a man, he wouldn't have to like move the ring back and forth. The best thing would be that he does, but he does not have to. Yeah, it has to be 2 dirhams or less, the weight of the dirhams, which is, I don't know how many. Yeah. Is it?